Donald Trump is more panicked than ever before, not just because his economic agenda is a joke that is failing on the global stage, not only because his domestic agenda is the least popular budget ever passed, but of course because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that just won't go away. And it won't go away because not just Democrats or independents, but Republicans are calling it out. And that is why Donald Trump is lashing out at his own party and threatening one Republican in a crazed meltdown that we are going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it does go a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we can get into the Republican calling out Donald Trump's Epstein scandal and the meltdown and the threats that he is launching, I want to start with the call out that we desperately need, and that is Lawrence O'Donnell calling out how the media has failed on this issue.
Every one of those 28 questions got a flow of nonsensical gibberish from Donald Trump that included lies, and so the White House press corps is failing before our eyes. Every chance they get to question Donald Trump, every time they fail to pursue the only president in history who had a best friend for 10 years who was raping children nearly every day of those 10 years. Donald Trump's own Justice Department, which he now owns and operates, has said that Jeffrey Epstein raped over 1,000 victims. 1,000. More than 1,000. They don't know how many. They don't know how many thousands of children Jeffrey Epstein may have raped. And most of the White House press corps does not care. Nothing can make them care. Most of the White House press corps has no idea what any of those victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell have said under oath about what happened to them. We are watching the worst president in history manipulate the worst White House press corps in history every day. But not Catherine Lacey and not Nancy Cortez, not today.
It has been a decade of Donald Trump in our politics, and somehow the media still does not take him seriously. They still view him as the ridiculous guy coming down the escalator who had no shot, shouting just bigoted bile, and they laugh at him. They think he's a joke, and he uses that to his advantage. Donald Trump is not a smart guy, but he does know what he's doing when it comes to the media. He plays these people. They think that he's their friend or he's just a bauble for them to play with. But this is serious. Not actually addressing the real crises that this administration is covering up at the same time as they work to suppress you, the press, is insanity to me. This would be a time more than any other to stand up and ask those tough questions, to push back, to follow up, to call out the administration. And the mainstream press has completely failed to do that. It's why independent media is so important right now, and why it's so important that we actually have a little bit of independent thought when it comes to very clear issues like Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and his cover-up of that relationship, which is exactly what Thomas Massie called out right here and why we're going to see a meltdown of a threat from Trump.
And we all thought that when Trump was elected, he would be the bull in the china shop and that he would break that up and bring transparency. Frankly, it wasn't until just recently that I realized that people who were allegedly working on this weren't sincere in their efforts. And also, politics is the art of the doable. There's enough public pressure right now that we can get 218 votes and force this to a vote on the floor. Somebody should ask Speaker Mike Johnson, why did he recess Congress early so that he didn't have to deal with the Epstein issue? He can bring this to the floor at any point, yet he's chosen to send us home early for August recess.
I think it's great that we have Republicans like Thomas Massie willing to call out Donald Trump, willing to show that this issue is that clear. But I don't want to cede any ground to Republicans. I don't want the fight back, the call outs of the Epstein scandal to be something that the Democrats, but really Thomas Massie, is rolling with. I want us to take all the credit. I know this isn't about credit. This is about truth. This is about justice. But this is also about defining the narrative. Democrats fighting back against corruption. Democrats calling out this abuse, calling out this cover-up. We should be the loudest on it. We should be fighting back the most, and we should be infuriating Trump, which clearly Thomas Massie did right here. Trump lashes out at his nemesis bringing Epstein victims to the Capitol. Thomas Massie is leading a bipartisan effort in the House to force the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. Donald Trump fired a loud and clear warning shot at a Republican lawmaker who is bringing a number of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse victims to the U.S. Capitol to force the release of legal files on the late financier. Thomas Massie of Kentucky has teamed up with Democrat Ro Khanna of California in a bipartisan push to secure a House vote on releasing the files from the Epstein investigation. They're holding a press conference on September 3rd to provide an update on the effort and have invited some of Epstein's victims to speak. Massie, an avowed fiscal hawk, has been a thorn in Trump's side when it comes to his policy agenda, voting against his deeply unpopular Big Beautiful Budget, which the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates will add $3.4 trillion to the deficit, and opposing his airstrikes in Iran. The president has now sent a thinly veiled warning in the form of a polling report that found that the lawmaker's break with Trump has made him susceptible to a primary challenger. On Thursday night, Trump posted screenshots of the findings on Truth Social with key sections highlighted, but without writing anything himself. A poll conducted in his district found that Massie's image ratings had gone from plus 14 in June to minus 11 in August, and that his job approval fell from plus 16 to minus 16. Plus 11 to minus 16. The drop was attributed to an ad campaign run by a political action committee called MAGA Kentucky. The president's favorable ratings, meanwhile, remain high among Republicans, and 57% of primary voters would be more likely to vote for a candidate who is endorsed and supported by Donald Trump, the survey said. That makes Massie extremely vulnerable in a Republican primary election for Congress, pollsters have concluded. I will say it again, but this will be the last time. Good on Thomas Massie for standing up to Donald Trump. I know in part, this is because he has larger political aspirations than to just be in Congress. But I do think we need to encourage this type of behavior, especially as towards the end there, it really seemed like more Republicans were getting on board with the idea of voting to release the Epstein files. It's not because there was anything in their heart telling them to. They don't believe in justice. They just saw the way that the wind was moving. They see that their constituents are so fascinated, so enthralled with this issue that it's actually motivating them. So maybe they've decided that they're going to fall in line. It's the reason we need to continue to keep the pressure up on this story. We will be coming back to Congress, and if we let Donald Trump define what the narrative is, define what we're going to be talking about, then we're not going to be able to push this thing through. But if we stay on top of it, if we stay pushing all the time, if we do not let up, we can make something happen. And it's the last thing that Donald Trump wants. And it's why it's good to have Democrats like Ro Khanna constantly speaking up on it.
But can you share more about how many survivors of his crimes you're expecting? What are you hoping to get out of this press conference? What are you hoping people take away from it?
Well, first of all, we want to center the victims because their voices have not been heard throughout the process. First, when Jeffrey Epstein got a ridiculously lenient sentence, they were sidelined. They were sidelined when Maxwell was sentenced, and their voices need to be heard and what they want. And what they want, what we're going to hear, is for closure, the full release of the Epstein files protecting victims. There are going to be probably at least a dozen there. I can't go into details to protect their identity, and I want to give them the floor to say what they want. But Thomas Massie and I are going to speak for maybe 30 seconds. It's really about the victims. And this is not about politics. Look, people say, well, why are you bringing this up now? That's just not true. With Elijah Cummings in 2019, many Democrats called for an investigation. President Biden actually allowed for the process to play out. The two courts were ordering the release of documents. And then Donald Trump got up there and said, let's just release it all. And Pam Bondi got up there and said, well, let's release it all. And no Democrat said anything. We said, OK, let's release them all. Then Pam Bondi, the attorney general, said, there's nothing to be had here. We're stopping all processes. Let's just move on. And that's not how this country works. You can't rig rules for the rich and powerful. And this is to center victims again in this whole saga and to call for transparency.
I think it's great that you are doing that, and I would welcome any of them who want to talk more on our show. We'd love to have them. Let me ask you another question about this, because you said you'll move to subpoena the Epstein birthday book when Congress comes back. It's been a long August, but the Congress is going to come back soon. That's the album, of course, of birthday messages for Jeffrey Epstein. And in 2003, that the Wall Street Journal reported includes a note from Donald Trump. That's probably why we're all talking about it. He denies it. He sued the paper over it. Now, the Epstein estate told you they'll release the album if the Oversight Committee issues a subpoena. That's what I understand is the latest here. Are you working on building support for that during this recess? Is that something we could hear a development on in September when Congress comes back?
Yes, we are working to develop support for it. I expect that we will pass the subpoena. The Oversight Committee, as you know, already voted, thanks to Representative Summer Lee's excellent work, to subpoena the Epstein files themselves. The problem there is that it's Trump's Justice Department that needs to comply, and it's Trump's Justice Department that prosecutes whether that compliance will happen or not. So that's going to be a long fight. But the same people who wanted the Epstein files should vote now to be able to get the files from the Epstein estate. And the good news here is they're saying they will comply with the subpoena. Not only can we get the infamous birthday book, we should also be able to get some of the financial records of who funded Epstein, where his money came from. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to get that vote early in September.
We'll be watching for that, and the financial files are a key part of all of this, no question. Congressman Ro Khanna of California, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
This is an issue that Democrats should be dominating. It is a space that we have really let go of with voters who maybe don't reach out for their politics, they're more bumping into it. I saw a lot of people who hadn't watched my show before tune in when we were talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Those are people who we can deliver our message to. Talk about how Democrats are actually fighting back against corruption, how Democrats do not want to see this massive wealth disparity where once you reach a certain level of income, certain level of connection, you're above the law. That's what Donald Trump proved out. He said his campaign was about political persecution, Joe Biden going after a political enemy, a complete fabrication, a complete lie. But what it really actually showed is that, yeah, our system is broken. Not because it attacks Donald Trump, but because it rewards people exactly like Donald Trump, exactly like Jeffrey Epstein. And don't forget all those people around him. Pam Bondi closing that investigation into Epstein wasn't her closing her investigation into Epstein and Trump. Nothing was going to come out on that front ever. It was closing an investigation into the rest of his associates. And why? Out of fear that any further information about them could show a connection to Trump. If you were rich, if you were well off, you were above the law according to these people. Because they want to protect themselves, they have to protect each other. When people's interests align, it is not a conspiracy. It is just the truth. That is what we are seeing. That is what we're going to continue to call out. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.